Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel, Jim Reads Too Slow. And this is my report on my reading during week 3 of Horror Mayhem, an event, of course, created by Scott and Becky Bryant over at the Bookish Bryants, where we read short horror fiction, during the month of May. So we're into week 3. We're actually past week 3, but I'm catching up. So during week 3, I read classic horror. And I read 5 stories. So I started with The Wendigo by Algernon Blackwood. Now, this is a story about a group of moose hunters in the North Woods, Great White North, and the strange, fearsome creature that stalks them and captures one of them. I quite enjoyed the story, although I have to admit that I do like Blackwood's The Willows better, which I read last year. Um, but I did enjoy this one. The Wendigo was published in the Lost Valley and Other Stories in 1910, so it's an old one. And it covers the folk horror and cryptid squares in my bingo card. So there's that. Um, Next, I read The White People by Arthur Machen. Now, this was written in the 1890s and first published in 1904. And I might spend just a hair more time on this one because I haven't really quite figured it out yet. And it's supposed to be Macon's masterpiece. The story opens with a conversation between two men about the nature of evil. An older philosopher named Ambrose, he tells a younger visitor that true evil is not what most of us imagine. It's not good versus bad necessarily, uh, but he says it's a lonely passion of the soul, um, like seeking knowledge that we aren't meant to have. He says that one might actually find a truly evil person to be likable. So this conversation goes on for way too long, and the men don't really reach any kind of agreement. And then Ambrose gives his visitor a book, a little green book, which is the found diary of a young girl who Ambrose said he knew. And the diary, he says, will illustrate the point that he's been trying to make during their evening conversation. So the visitor, caught grave, accepts the book, takes it with him, uh, and he reads in it the writings of this teenage girl who was raised by her nurse and educated by her in the ways of magic and witchcraft. She writes about that, about this alternate alternative reality that she enters, this weird world with its strange landscapes and beings, including the white people. Now, it's all very cryptic, but it's very descriptive. The mood is set well, but nothing is really very clear or straightforward in the story. There's no real plot uh, to speak of, except for this girl's continuing to plod forward um, through this world that she enters, um, apparently falls in love with, and wants to go deeper and deeper into. She gets more and more into it, and then when something is about to happen, the diary comes to an end, and we are told that the girl was found dead after inadvertently poisoning herself. And I more than likely should have paid a lot closer attention to what was in the middle of all of that description that was going on, all that prose, because I was kind of left wondering what it was that I just read when I finished. Well, Macon was a big influence on H.P. Lovecraft, and Lovecraft's take on the ending of this story is that the girl had sex with some creature while she was out in the woods during one of her pagan romps, I guess. Presumably, it was one of the white people. She became pregnant, and when she realized what kind of demon spawn that she would be loosing upon the world, she killed herself. Lovecraft said in a letter, he said, there is very little question about the correctness of this interpretation. Okay. If you've got a theory of your own about what happened in this story, please let me know in the comments. Now, this one covers the Witches Square in our bingo card. And I would argue as well as that I will put another X in the Folk Horror Square also. So next, I read The Thing That Drifted Ashore by Junji Ito. Now, this is a Japanese anime, manga about a later anime, but it's a manga about a gigantic sea creature that washes ashore dead. And when the crowds that gather to gawk at it start looking closer, they discover to their horror that inside this rotting creature, it's full of presumably drowned human beings. It's got transparent patches in various places on its skin so the people can see inside and see all these bodies. Well, this creature is sliced open, and these hundreds of people start spilling out onto the beach. Well, the horror of the crowd is compounded when they learn that these people are all still alive. Well, how is that possible? Well, apparently the people were parasites living off of this creature who was swallowing more and more until it just couldn't take it anymore and died. The story just gets creepier and more gross the more I think about it. It is available online. I found it on Imager as well as on YouTube, several different versions of it. And so I would definitely recommend finding it and reading it for yourself. This one fits the translated horror square on my bingo card. Is this a classic story? The best that I was able to figure out, it was published in 1997 in a collection titled Slug Girl. So technically, probably not. Is it classic manga? I don't know. I do know that it's listed as a must-read Junji Ito story. So I'll give myself a very soft slap on the wrist for this one. Story number 4 was The Landlady by Roald Dahl. The same guy who wrote Willy Wonka, James and the Giant Peach, Matilda, and other beloved children's classics. The Landlady was first published in the New Yorker in 1959. Then as part of a collection of short stories called Kiss Kiss in 1960. And I read it in my Roald Dahl Omnibus, which is a Barnes & Noble publication from 1993. The story is about a young man who has traveled from London to Bath in England to start a new job. He has just arrived in Bath. It's nighttime. He's tired. And so he gets a room at a bed and breakfast, the nearest place he can find. It's run by this sweet old eccentric lady who we find is really into taxidermy. And to say any more than that would be to spoil the story for those of you who have not read it. Those few of you who have not read it. I really recommend this story. And I liked it so much that I decided to read another one. So my final story was Skin by Roald Dahl. Originally published in the New Yorker in 1952, then in 1953 in a collection called Someone Like You. And it's also here in my Roald Dahl omnibus. And it has subsequently been published in a book called Skin and Other Stories, which was published in 2000. Now, this story, Skin, opens with an old man named Drioli, who was a former tattoo artist. And he's wandering around the streets of Paris in 1946. He's destitute. You get the idea he doesn't have a lot of time left. But he's passing by an art gallery one night, and he sees in through the window that there's an art show in progress featuring the paintings of a late friend of his, Haim Soutine, if I'm pronouncing that right. So Drioli rushes inside before he thinks about it, full of nostalgia, brushes past the people who are trying to get him to turn around and get back out. And he announces that he has a work of art by Soutine on him, so to speak. He proceeds to strip off his coat, his shirt, and he shows off this tattoo covering his back, a tattoo of his late wife that was done by his old friend, the artist, way back before World War I. In a flashback, we see Drioli persuading the artist to do the tattoo, even teaching him how to handle the tattooing equipment and the inks. Well, the people in the gallery are amazed because they immediately recognize that this is an authentic work from this famous painter. And then the bidding begins. A couple of big money men are on hand. They recognize the value of this work and they want it. And the tone of the story gets real dark real quick. Drioli gets really uneasy, as you can imagine, about this situation. And he accepts, just because he's hungry and he wants to get out of there, he accepts the offer of one of the men to live out the remainder of his life in comfort at this hotel in Cannes. Well, how does that work out for him? I'm going to, hopefully you will find the story and read it. It's worth it. It is a decent story. Like I say, I do recommend it. I would put it in the horror adjacent box, maybe. Yeah. So there you have it. That is week 3 of Horror Mayhem for me. Now, the final week is contemporary horror going on right now. There are a few days left, though. So let's see what I can finish. And then I'll get back to you. We'll get back in touch and I'll tell you what I've been reading. So until then, have a good one, BookTube.